Hello, and welcome to the latest video on my channel. Today we'll build and deploy a full stack product organizer application using Next.js, Prisma, Postgres, and the deployment will be on vercel. This will be a 100% server action project, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So a user will start out on our homepage with a simple hero layout. Once the user clicks on sign in, they'll be redirected to the sign in window, which is being provided by Clerk. We have the ability to log in with our Google account. Once the user is logged in, they'll be redirected to our dashboard window where the user will have full Crud capability. Currently, we are displaying all categories that are created within our dashboard. So currently I have a sneaker category, and if I choose to, I can add another category named clothes. Once we add the category, the page will revalidate and redirect us to the home page, but send us back to our dashboard window with the newly added category. Here we have the ability to see the details of this individual category by clicking on details. This is going to redirect us to the individual category page, where we can change the category name. Let's just say we want to make it clothes without an S. And if we hit update, we notice that we now have a updated name of clothes without an S. So now let's say that we'll like to add an item to our sneaker category. We can click on details. And I'm going to add that I have a Jordan sneaker that I want to add into my sneaker category. Once I type in the name of the item and I click add product, we'll be redirected back to the dashboard window. And if I click on sneaker, as you can see, we now have the sneaker item listed within our dashboard. We also have the ability to delete a product that may be associated with the category. And once we delete it, you see that we're now getting the message again of add your first product. If we go back to the dashboard window and we no longer want to keep this particular item in our organizer, we can click on delete. And as you can see, it is no longer listed there. So what I have to start out is my VS Code with a open directory that will store our Next.js project. So begin the installation. Let's open up our terminal. And we want to type in the command npx create next app at latest. And I'm going to do space dot so it is installed in the current directory. For this project, we will not use TypeScript. We'll say yes to ESLint, yes to Tailwind, no to SRC, yes to the app router, no to the import alias. Once our project is finished installing, let's go ahead and install NextUI. We'll be using NextUI to help us a little bit with styling, to minimize some of the Tailwind CSS that we will be writing and take advantage of some of the pre-built components. So if you head to nextui.org and scroll down the documentation, we want to install the package that includes frame of motion. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and install Next Themes. This is also a package from NextUI that's going to allow us to take advantage of a few more capabilities of NextUI, and we'll talk about it more as we go along in the project. Next, we'll need to update our tailwind.config file with some additional code that'll give our Tailwind access to the NextUI package. So within the tailwind.config.js file, go ahead and copy the initial NextUI variable. We'll also need to install the node modules. And we'll need to include the plugins. And we'll also include the dark mode as well in the event we want to add in a theme toggle for our application. Next, we'll need to wrap our application with the theme provider. So we'll go ahead and save the tailwind.config.js file. And within the root directory, let's add a folder named lib. And within it, let's add a file named nextthemeprovider.js. Now, NextThemes is a front-end application, so it will require client-side interaction. And because Nextjs is server-side rendered by default, we'll need to start by marking this as a client-side or giving the use client directive. And from there, we'll need to import the theme provider. And we'll say theme provider as NextThemes. And be sure to include the S after themes to make it NextThemes provider. And that's going to come from NextTheme. And then from there, we'll need to export a function. And we're going to export the name is going to be NextTheme, not themes with an S as it suggested. So we'll make it NextTheme provider. And within it, we'll pass in the children as we do within the other functional component. And within it, we'll have a return statement. And what we want to return is NextThemes provider. And we'll pass in the children. Be sure to give it the attribute of class. And from there, we'll also need to enable the system. So let's go ahead and save this file and we can close it out for now. Now we'll need to wrap our main layout with the theme provider in order to gain access. So within the app directory, click on layout.js. And within the body tag, what we want to do is highlight, copy, and delete the children and begin to type in next theme provider. And if you begin to type it with the less than bracket, capital next theme, you should have the ability to import it from the @lib directory. And if you've done so, go ahead and import it, and it should auto-complete out the next theme provider. And then within the next theme, we want to pass in the children. That way, our entire application will have access to the next theme provider. So with that, we should have the Next UI package fully installed. And we can go ahead and close out this file. And from there, we'll want to go back into the app directory, click on page.js. And let's just remove all of the boiler code that comes from Nextjs. And we'll replace it with our own functional component. And we'll name it homepage. And this will represent the homepage of our application. And before we spin up the application, let's go ahead and remove all of the boiler styling as well. We do want to keep the tailwind configuration. And I'm just going to add the body tag and set the overflow on the x-axis to hidden. And just to make sure that everything is working properly, let's go ahead and spin up our application. So if we navigate back to the terminal and we type in the command npm run dev. So I'll go ahead and within the browser, I'll load or go to the site localhost 3000. And what we should see is our home page with a blank screen. So now let's just make sure that NextThemes is working properly. So what we want to do is let's just test it with the button. So at the top of the page, let's type in import and we'll add brackets and let's bring in a button just to test it out to make sure that the theme package is working. So we'll go brackets and you'll type button with a capital B. And if everything is installed successfully, one of the signs to let us know is that we should see the next UI appear for us to import in automatically. And from there, within the div, let's pass in the button that we just imported. And within it, we'll pass in hello world. We'll click Save. And if we refresh our local host, we'll see that we have a button from NextUI, which lets us know that we have the NextUI package installed successfully. Great. So we'll remove it for now because we don't want it on our home page. And we'll go ahead and remove the import as well. So now's a good time to add a little authentication to our project. And for this project, we're going to be taking advantage of Clerk. So if you head to the documentation, which is at clerk.com, what we want is to take advantage of Clerk's pre-built SDK components for Next.js. And we'll start by installing the @clerk/Next.js to add the SDK to our project. So back in our VS Code, we can keep the initial terminal. Actually, let's go ahead and close down our NPM because we'll need to reset it. And I'll go ahead and slide the terminal up so you can see it a little better. Type clear. There we go. And within the terminal, we're going to paste in the code that we can copy from the Clerk documentation. We'll give it a few minutes to install. And while it is doing so, now we'll need to update our environment variables with the publishable key and our secret key. So before we sign in to get access to our keys, let's go ahead and add a .env file. So within the root directory, let's add a file named .env. And before we add anything to it, let's include it in our .gitignore file. That way, when we deploy our project, I'm going to make my code public so you can gain access to it. But I would suggest it's always a good practice to keep the environment variables secure. That way no one can gain access to it, because with it, they can gain access to your project and really manipulate your data. So within the .gitignore, I'm going to include my .env file, and I'll save it and close it out. And to get the publishable key, we'll need to sign in. It is free to sign in to Clerk, or to sign up for Clerk, I should say. So in order to sign in, just click on Get Started. Once you're logged into Clerk, as I've done, you'll just need to go back to the documentation. And to know that you're logged in, if you're in a private browser like myself, you should see Dashboard. And if we go down to the environment variable section, you're going to see that we now have a publishable key and a secret key. Go ahead and copy that code, and let's paste it into the .env file. And from there, we can close out this file. And next up, what we want is to add middleware. Middleware is essential to make sure that we're granting access to authenticated users. We don't want anyone to just get access to this application, especially since we are going to deploy it. So what we want to do is add a file named middleware.js. And within the middleware.js file, we're going to do a little different configuration than what's suggested from the documentation, but I'm going to walk you through it. First, we'll start by importing the Clerk middleware. And we also want to get access to create a route matcher. And I'll explain that in just a moment. And be sure that both of these are coming from @clerk/nextjs/server. Then I want to create a variable named isProtectedRoute. And we want to gain access to the create route matcher. And within the route matcher, what we want is to protect the dashboard page. So we'll go within parentheses /dashboard. And what this is saying is any route that has /dashboard in front of it is going to be included. And ultimately, that's what we want. So in order to ensure that's what we get after the dashboard, we want to include parentheses, make sure that we have the open and close parentheses, and then we want to pass in .asterisk. And what this is going to do, it's going to protect, let me include this here. Sorry about that. What this is going to do, it's going to protect any route that has /dashboard in front of it. And once the user is authenticated, all of the routes that will be utilized for a logged in user will be /dashboard. And so what we'll have is to see all categories of our items will be /dashboard, and this will be all. And if we want to add a new item, we'll go dashboard /item. And if we want to update, we'll say something like dashboard /update. And what this means is that all of these routes will be protected and only authenticated users will have access to it. So be sure that you create this variable and that you're getting access to the create route matcher. Then we want to export default the clerk middleware. And we want to pass in the auth and a request. And we'll do it like this, sorry. And we want to pass in and say if is protected, if it is a protected route, the request, then we want to leverage the auth, and we also want to leverage protect. Great. Uh-oh, I'm getting an error. I think I have too many. Yeah, this should have been a parentheses and not a, no, this should have been a bracket and not a parentheses. Sorry about that. So now what it's saying, if we're passing in we're going to check if it is a protected route based on the request, then we want to make sure that we have off, and we want to make sure that it is protected. And then finally, we can actually copy the export const configuration directly from the middleware documentation just to make sure that we don't make any errors. And if we go ahead and save it, we're actually done, and we can close out the middleware.js file. So we've now protected our application so that no unauthenticated user has access to the dashboard. Great. And we'll test that out in just a moment. Next up, we'll need to add the clerk provider, and the documentation suggests that we add this to the root layout. So within the app/layout.js file, we're going to wrap our entire application with the clerk provider. So let's close out the middleware file, and for now we can close out the page.js. And within our layout.js, let's go ahead and import clerk, and this is going to come from @clerk/Nextjs. So at the top of the layout file, we'll go import, we'll go clerk provider, and it is automatically recognizing that this needs to come from @clerk.nextjs, which is perfect. And then now let's just copy and delete the entire HTML. And we're going to gain access to the clerk provider that we just imported. And then we can paste in the HTML code that we just copied and removed so that the entire website is wrapped with the clerk provider. Perfect. So now the next step for us will be to create a custom sign in and sign up pages. So let's go ahead and click on that documentation now. And because we're using the app router, what we want to do is take advantage of the sign up and sign in pre-built components. So we'll go ahead and copy this code as listed, which is everything after the app/ and before the /page.js. So just be sure to copy it. And inside of our root directory, let's click on the app folder and let's add a folder to it and paste in the code that we just copied. And if you press enter, you should automatically see the down arrow that's going to allow you, or that's going to let you know that you are within the most recent folder within the app directory that we just created. So within it, I'm going to add a file named page.js, and we're going to simply copy this entire code that's listed within this snippet, and we'll paste it. And we're going to do the exact same thing for a sign up. So let's go ahead and copy the code between app and app/page.tsx. We're going to copy that code, and we'll go back to the app directory, add a folder, paste in the code. Be sure that the caret arrow is pointing down, and within it, let's add a file named page.js. And we can copy the sign-in snippet component as listed on the documentation. Let's paste it. And we actually can close out the page.js file, both of them, and the layout.js. And what I think I want to do is organize this so I can have a separate layout for the authentication and the website. So within the app directory, let's add another folder with name open parentheses off, close parentheses, and then press enter. And then let's just drag the code that we just created to sign in into that off directory, and it's going to ask us if we want to move it, and we'll say yes. And be sure that the page.js is included within it as well. Great, it is. And then now we want to move the the sign up within that directory as well, and just be sure that it is going within the parentheses off. And then once we moved it, we should see a message that asks, are we sure we want to move to the sign up into the parentheses off? And we'll say move. And then great, now we should only see the app directory, and inside of it, a parentheses off, the fave icon, global CSS, and layout. And if we click on the parentheses off, we should see sign in and sign up. Perfect. Now what I want to do is add a custom layout to just this directory. Next.js makes it so easy for us to add unique layouts based on the grouping of routes. And I want to have a unique layout just for the auth. So within the auth folder, let's add a file named layout.js. And within this file, we'll create a layout functional component. We'll pass in children. And we can remove the layout that's within the div tags and add in brackets and then children. And within the div, I want to add a little bit of styling. That way the sign up and sign in for clerk is centered within the window and not at the top or upper left as it will be by default. So within the div, let's go ahead and add a class name, and we'll set the height to screen. We'll add flex, and we'll set the direction to column. And then we'll say justify center, and we want the items to be centered. Great. And I know we can't see anything right now because we don't have our server running, but once it is up and going, I'm going to show you what it looks like. And the reason that we made that change, it just aesthetically looks a little better to me, but that's totally optional if you don't wish to do so. So if we scroll down the documentation, we need to update our environment variables with the clerk sign in URL and sign up URL. So we'll just copy the snippet as listed here, go back into the .env file that's within the root directory, and we'll paste in those two URLs. And then now if we run the command npm run dev, we should have access to clerk and its authentication. While we are waiting on the local host to spin up, let's go ahead and close out the files that we have open. And within the app directory, let's add another folder named open parentheses website, close parentheses. And what I want to do is I want to organize this a little better. So let's move the page.js that's within the app directory into this website folder. That way, anything that is the website will be within the website folder, and authentication is in its own separate folder. So I'm going to move it into it now. We should get the warning message that wants to confirm that we want to make this move, and we'll click move. And within the website, I want to add a route. The first route I want to add is dashboard. This is going to have all of our listings within it. So within website, let's add a folder named dashboard. And then within it, let's add a file named page.js. And we'll do the RFCE template, and we'll rename this component or name this component to be dashboard. Click save. And now if we refresh our local host, we see that it is up and working. So let's try to access the dashboard page to see what we get. So we'll go /dashboard. And you'll notice once it finished loading, it automatically asks us to sign in. So great. We know the middleware is working perfectly fine. And if we take a look at the URL, we're going to notice that it says sign in. So that means that it is redirecting us. Clerk middleware is working perfectly as designed. So let's test it out to make sure that it's working. So let's go ahead and log in with Google. And once you click the login button, you're going to see that you're automatically redirected to dashboard, which is a sign that the dashboard page is working, or excuse me, that it's a sign that the middleware is working properly. But let's just make sure that we do see or have access to a logged in user. So if we go back to the documentation, what we want to do is get access to read the user data. Actually, let's click on the clerk components. And what we want is for right now just to test out the access to confirm that the clerk information is carrying over and we get access to the user button. So within the dashboard for right now, let's just import user button. I think that is, yes, capital. So we'll go import user with a capital U and then button with a capital B, and that's going to come from clerk. And if we have an authenticated user, we should be able to see that user's information. So within the div tags, let's add user button. Let's gain access to what we just imported. And if we go back to our local host, we see that we now have a logged in user. We're logged in as the JADAB, and we have the ability to sign out. Great. So now that we have authentication with our application, the next thing we want to do is go ahead and layer in Prisma and set up our database. And we're going to be using a Postgres database on vercel, which is going to make deployment that much easier. So we'll go ahead and tackle that next. So to interact with our Postgres database, we'll be using Prisma to do the heavy lifting for us. So go ahead and stop your terminal, and inside of it, type in the command npm i-d and Prisma. Great. Once it's complete, next we want to type in npm i, and we want to install the Prisma client. And finally, what we want to do is type in npx prisma init. And if we go back to our root directory, once it is finished installing, we should see that that command installed a directory named Prisma, and within the directory, a schema.prisma file. Within this file, we're going to store our database connection to vercel, and we'll also add the models for our product items. So first, let's go ahead and set up our connection to our Postgres database. As I mentioned, we're going to be deploying this project to vercel, and I want to leverage a Postgres database within it. So if you don't already have a vercel account, go ahead and sign up. It is absolutely free. You can use the free tier in order to set up your database. I have a paid tier because I have quite a few projects going outside of what you see here. So the first thing we want to do once we're logged in is click on Create a Database. And this will be a Postgres database, and then we'll click Create. And we'll start by naming our database, and I'm going to name it Product Organizer, excuse me. And then I'll click Create. And then once it is created, we should be redirected to the storage window that gives us access to the database. First thing we want to do is click on the .env.local file. We want to copy the Postgres information and paste it into our application. So we'll click Copy Snippet. And we'll go back to our VS Code and click on the .env file. And we can delete the database URL and replace it with the Postgres information. Be sure to save the file and close it out. And if we go back to the vercel website, next we want to click on the Prisma tab. And from here, we want to copy the data source. And if we go back to VS Code and click on the schema.prisma file, let's replace the database DB with the copied code from our Postgres vercel database. And once we replace it, be sure to click Save. And that is pretty much all we need to do to connect our application to the Postgres database. Now what we want to do is update the models that will be used to organize our products within the database. First thing we want to do is create a model named Product. And this is going to represent the products that we'll be organizing within the database. We'll add an ID, which will be the unique identifier. And this will be a string. And then we'll go add ID. And then we'll say default is going to be CUID. And be sure to call it within default. Next up, we want to have a name of the item that we'll be storing within the database. This is going to represent the name of the item that we'll be storing to keep track of, and we want to store this as a string. Then we'll want to add the ability to see when this item was created, so we'll leverage created at, and this will be date time, and the default for it will be now. And we'll also want to keep track of when it was updated. So we'll go updated at. This will be date time. And we want to make sure that this is at updated at. Great. Now we want to have the ability to organize our products in category. So we'll create a model named category. And we can copy the ID and paste it within the category that we created from product. We can also copy the string created at and updated at. Okay, perfect. Now we'll want to establish a relation between product and category. So we'll create a products, and it will be stored as an array, an empty array that we can add several products to a category. And you'll notice that we're getting an error, and this is saying that there's no relational field between product and category. So we'll go back to product and we'll add category. And then we'll go add relation. And we want the relation to be fields. And we'll say the category ID. And what we want to do is reference the ID. So now we're getting an error under category ID, and that is because it does not exist within the product model. So underneath category, let's add category ID. And this is going to be stored as a string. Great. So now we're not getting any more errors. And the last thing we want to do is include the ability to capture the user that created the product. And we're not going to necessarily store the user in the database. What we're going to do is leverage the object coming from clerk by capturing the first name of the user that's logged in. Any logged in user that creates a product, we're going to automatically capture their first name, and that will be the product associated with them. So we'll just say creator, and we'll store it as a string. Great. So for our models, we are 100% complete. And at this point, we are ready to push our models to our Postgres database. So within the terminal, in order to do so within the terminal, let's go ahead and type in the command npx prisma db push. And as you can see, we got the message, your database is now in sync with the Prisma schema. Great. And then finally, what we want to do is type in npx prisma generate. Awesome. Now that that's complete, the last thing we'll need to do is create a function that we can leverage in order to communicate with our database and get access to these models. So within the lib directory, let's create a file named prisma.js. And within it, we want to create a function. Well, the first thing we want to do is gain access to the Prisma client. So we'll go import Prisma client, and then we'll create a Prisma client singleton, and we'll say equals return new Prisma client, and be sure to call it, excuse me. Then we'll say const global for Prisma is equal to global this, and it will say const Prisma is equal to global Prisma.Prisma, and we'll call Prisma single client. And then from here, we'll want to export default Prisma. And we'll say if process.env .node underscore env, if it is not production, we'll say global for Prisma dot Prisma is equal to Prisma. And I just realized I made that form instead of for, so let me correct that now. And all this is doing is just establishing a connection using Prisma to our database. And if we're not in production, it just recognizes what it defaults to and makes sure that it runs properly so that we're not just continually to run Prisma over and over and over. Great. So what we could do now is go ahead and start up our server by typing in npm run dev, and we'll gain access to another terminal so that we can start up the Prisma Studio, which is just a interface that allows us to communicate with the database easier than going to vercel. So we'll type in the command npx Prisma Studio and press enter. And you'll notice that this is going to start on localhost 555. So I'm just going to copy it and go back to my browser. And you'll notice once it's fully loaded, you'll see that all models, and we have a product model, and we also have a category model. And the category model has the ID name created, updated at, and an empty array for products, because a category can have more than one product. And for product, we have ID name created at, updated at, category, the identifier ID, and also the creator. Great. So at this point, we have our authentication set up. We have our database set up. Now we're ready to start to build out some of the front-end client-side interactivity so that we can communicate with our database and set up all of our Crud functionality. So we'll work on our layout in the next section. So now that we have our authentication and connection to database with models set up, let's go ahead and start to build out our front end so we can bring a little bit of life to our website. So now that we're back at the home page, what we're going to do is have a simple hero section that has a link to the sign-in page. Once the user clicks on that link, they'll be redirected to sign in, and from there, they'll have the ability to sign in, and they'll be redirected to the dashboard. So let's go ahead and work on setting up the simple hero section on the home page now. So within the app directory, let's click on the website folder. And within it, let's click on page.js. And within the page.js, let's go ahead and remove the div and replace it with a section tag. And with our section tag, let's give it a class name. And we can just set the padding on the y-axis to 6. Then within it, let's add a div and give it a class name. We'll say text will be centered, set the width to full. We'll give it a margin of auto, padding on the y-axis of 12, on the x of 4. And let's just get something on the screen so we can see what we have. I'll just type in home page. Okay. And I think on small devices, we'll make the padding on the X4. Large devices, padding on the Y of 16, maybe. Make it a little bigger. And on large devices, we'll go padding on the X-axis of 4. No, we'll make it 8. And we can just save it from there. All right. And if we open it up, we see that it looks good. So we'll remove home page and we'll add here we can add a H1. We'll give it a class name of text 3XL. We'll make the font extra bold. Text will be black. And on small devices, we'll make the text 2XL. And we'll say, within this, we'll go span, and then we'll say personal item organizer. Let's save. And we'll give this a class name of block. And then underneath that span, we'll add another span. And we'll say your personal item organizer voted as the best tracker available. and then I'll say sign in below. Save. Woo. Let's clean that up a little bit. We'll go class name. I'll make this text purple. We'll go 300 just to give it a little different color. Okay. That'll work. Let me make this block. There we go. All right, that's much better. And then underneath the H1, I'm gonna add a div. We'll give it a class name. On large devices, we'll set the margin top to 0. On large, we'll go flex shrink, and we'll set it to 0. And then within this, we'll go div with a class name, margin top of 12, inline flex, and we'll go rounded medium. Yeah, that should be fine. And then we'll go save. All right, and we'll add a link, and we'll be sure to import it from next/link. And the way I brought it in was the less than bracket, capital LIN, and then you should have the ability to import it from next link. And this link, I want the href, I want to set it to sign, SIGN -n, excuse me. And I'll grab a button from nextui.org, and we'll say sign in here and hit save. There we go. Sorry, I'm not sure why it took so long. We'll go class name, and I'll go background purple, and we'll go 800. Okay. And if we click sign in, it should redirect us to the login page for Clerk. Okay. So it didn't redirect us to the login page because we're already signed in. So because we're already signed in, what I want to happen going forward is if a user is signed in, I don't want them to see this page. I just want them to go directly to the dashboard. So the way that we'll accomplish this is we'll bring in the auth object from Clerk. And because this is because this is a server side, we're going to utilize the server side auth feature from Clerk. So we'll go import auth, and we're going to import it from, let me see. I don't see it here. That's okay. We'll just go import auth, and we'll go from @clerk/Nextjs, and this is going to be server. That's correct. And then let's mark the home page as async because we're going to need to do some asynchronous function. And let's go const user ID is equal to auth that we just imported, and we want to call it. And then what we'll say is if there's a user ID, we want to redirect the user, and we need to import redirect from Next Navigation. And the way you'll do it is, again, you'll just type in redirect, and it'll automatically show options from where you can import it, and just import it from Next.js. But we want to redirect the user to dashboard. So if we're signed in and there's a logged in user, we should be redirected to the dashboard based on this code that we have here. So I'm going to click save. And as you can see, we are now redirected to our dashboard page. Perfect. So it appears that the authentication with Clerk and middleware is working perfectly, and we are completely done with the home page. That was simple enough. So now we'll turn our focus to setting up our dashboard. Okay, so now we'll shift our focus to designing our layout for our dashboard page. And we'll start by going inside of the app directory, inside of website. And in website, let's create a folder named _components. And in that way, any components relevant to the dashboard and everything else that goes along with it will be stored within this particular folder. So we'll start by clicking on the dashboard and folder, and then we'll click on page.js. Let's go ahead and remove the div, and let's remove everything within the return statement, I should say, and replace it with a section. And let's give it a class name and include padding on the Y of 6. We'll go min height screen so that this window or this page takes up the entire screen. And I think instead of padding on the Y, let's just do a padding of maybe 24, and then I'll go space Y of 4. Well, let's make it 6. It's a little bigger. Hit save. I know you won't see anything just yet, but that's okay. And I'll remove the user button. And we'll go flex column. We'll hit save, dashboard, and we'll refresh it. Okay, and that we see the dashboard listed here. So I'm going to remove that dashboard. And inside of components, let's add a file named header.js. And we'll give it a functional component, or excuse me, a function named header with a capital H. Let's go ahead and replace this div with a section, and we'll go padding on the Y of 6. And then inside of the section, let's add, we probably should have went header, but it's okay. We'll go nav, and we'll give it a class name of mxauto. And we'll go max width screen, and we'll make it large. And we'll hit save. And then within the header, we'll go div. We'll give it a class name of flex, item centered, and we'll say justify between. And I'll add a H1 that reads personal tracker. Hit save, and let's go ahead and import this header. And I want the dashboard to have a separate layout, or its own layout I should say. So inside of the dashboard, we know with Nextjs we can create as many layouts as we want as long as they are organized within the appropriate directory. So inside of dashboard, let's add a file named layout.js, and we'll create a function named layout. Make sure it's exported, and inside of it we'll pass in children, and in the divs we'll replace the layout with the children. We'll hit save. Okay, and it is updated. Now let's import the header that we just created to see what it looks like. Okay, and we see it listed here on the top of the screen. Perfect. So I think what we'll do is screen. Yep, that looks good. And if we expand it out, that's what we see. So that's fine. I think what I'll do is add a little bit of, oh, hey, this is part of the problem. I didn't put class name there. We'll go class name PY of 6. All right, and I think we gave the dashboard a padding of 12. So I'm just going to copy this same, and I'll go, I actually could probably replace, don't need the max width anymore now that I have this. And let's go padding on the X of 24. There we go. And we'll say padding on the Y of, let's go 6. Okay. And then now across from the personal tracker, I'm going to bring in the user button from clerk. There we go. And if we expand it out, that's what it looks like. And in that way, we still have access. And if we click on it, we can be able to log out if we need to, but we're not worried about that right now. So this will serve as the name of the site, and this will give us access to log in and out. Perfect. So we can close out the header, and we can close out the layout.js. So let's go back to the page.js. That's the dashboard page, or that's within the dashboard directory. So inside of this is where we want to store our, this is where we want to store the categories. And then what we'll do is we'll have the ability to click on a category. And once we click on the category, we'll be able to see all of the products that are associated with that particular category. So first, let's go ahead and mark this file as async, because we're going to need the ability to interact with our database, and we know that that's going to be an asynchronous function. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to grab the user that is currently logged in so that I can grab all of the categories that this particular user created. This is what's going to allow this site to be scalable, because it's going to be unique to each user, hence a personal tracker. Or maybe I should call this personal organizer. I don't know why I called it tracker. I'm sorry. This should be personal organizer. There we go. And we'll close that out. Sorry. Yep, there we go. All right. And so what we want to do first is we want to get the ability to grab the user. So I'm going to say we'll need access to current user from clerk. So we'll go import current user, and this should come from, yeah, this doesn't look right. This should be from @clerk/Nextjs, and it should be server. And then we'll also need to get access to Prisma from the lib directory. And the first thing we want to do is create a user variable so that we can gain access to the current user object that we just imported from clerk. So we'll go const user is equal to await current user, and be sure to call it. And then we'll say const creator is equal to user.firstname. And this is going to serve as the string that will be associated with the creator of the category. That way it remains unique to that user. Now we want to create a variable to get the categories from the database. So we'll go const categories, categories is equal to await. And we want to grab access to Prisma, which is coming from the lib directory that we just brought in. And we'll say prisma.category, category, which is the name of the model that we use to organize our categories in the database. And then we'll say dot find many, because we want to get access to all of them. And then within it, we want to say where, and this is where we're going to get a little, this is where we'll be able to distinguish which categories that we get. We'll say where creator is equal to, or it is creator. And this means that we'll only get access to the categories that was created by this creator. Perfect. So now what we want to do is display the categories in a simple table. But before we display them, I want to show a message to the user that, hey, you've logged in and you don't have any categories created. So go ahead and create your first category today. So the first thing I want to do is just add a div, and I'm just going to put create or add category here. Because what I want is I'm just going to add a form to create the category listed there. And we're getting the error message that the Prisma client validation error. So let's see if we're getting a validation error. Then wait a minute, let me finish this out first. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and display a message in the event we don't have any categories. So we'll say categories.map. No, I'm sorry. is categories.length. If the length is greater than 0, then what we want to do is we want to display the categories, and we'll show them in a table. Otherwise, what we want to do is we want to show a message to the user that there are no categories created. So underneath it, we'll go, give me a moment to type this out. And we'll need to pass in some brackets here to get rid of the error. All right, and I'll explain this in just a moment. I'll go div, and then we'll say create or add a category today. Add a category today. Hit save. Okay, and it appears that we are getting an error, unknown argument creator. So let's see. Okay, I added the creator to the product, and we actually want this to the category. So that was my mistake. So let's go ahead and clean that up now. So remove the creator string from product, and let's replace it, or let's adjust and add it to the category. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and stop the server. And we'll hit clear. And then we'll say npx db push. No, npx prisma db push. All right, it is now in sync. And then we'll say npx prisma generate. Excuse me. And give it a moment. Perfect. So now we'll go clear, and then we'll go npm run dev. And then we can close that out. And I'll just go ahead and refresh the dashboard page. Okay, perfect. So now you see it is giving the message of add a category, and this is because we do not have a category currently added. So my apologies about the mix-up. I should have added the creator to the category and not the product. So if you follow the steps that I just did, it should correct the issue rather easily, and we'll be back on track to get this all set up. So now what I want to do is add a table to just display the categories here. So inside of the open brackets, and just to give a quick justification or explanation of this code, I should say, what this is saying is that if the category length is greater than 0, I want to show the table and the categories in a table listed here. And if it is less than, or excuse me, or if it is equal to 0, then we're going to show add a category today. And that's what we see on the screen now. And we can add, just to center it a little bit, we'll go class name text center. And it is now centered. So no big deal. Just wanted to add that in because it looks a little better. So I'm going to go ahead and build out the table to display a category, although we don't have any categories in the database just yet, and that's okay. So we'll add a table, and we'll give it a class name of min width of full. And then we'll go leading normal, and this is for the text, and we want the text to be centered. And then we'll give a table head. We know we need to have that. And the table row will have a table header. And our table header will have a class name. We'll go padding on the X of 5. And we'll say padding on the Y of 3. We want the text size to be small. We'll set the font to be normal. We'll make the text centered. Then we'll go text gray, and I think I'll make it 800. I'd like for this to be uppercase. We'll set the background to white, and then we'll say border bottom, and we'll make the border gray And let's just set it to 200. I know we can't see anything just yet, but that's okay. So we'll just say name. And we don't have to make it capital because we're going to make it capital there. And once we add the name, hit save. And we're not seeing anything on the screen yet because we don't have anything added in the database, and that is fine. So I think after we show the name, I think the next thing I want to add is a category, or excuse me, a table header to update. Yep. And we can copy this same code and place it here. And then we'll say update, and we'll hit save. Now, underneath the table head, I want to add the body. And within the body, this is where we'll need to map over all of our categories and display them within the table body. So we'll go brackets. We know that we need to add the brackets because this is going to be some JavaScript. So we'll go categories.map. And then we'll name this a category. And then we'll say within it, we want to pass in for each category, we want to create a table row. And then we want to pass in the table data. And the table row, we'll need to give it a key. And remember, we have to make sure that we pass a key so that each one has its own unique ID. So we'll say category.id. And then here we'll pass in the category name within the table data. So we'll go category.name. And we'll add some styling to it as well. We'll go class name within the table data. Excuse me. And then we'll go padding on the X of 5. We'll go padding on the Y of 3. We'll make the text small. Font will be normal. We'll make the text centered. We'll say text gray. And I think we'll make this one 800 to be consistent. Then we'll go border bottom just so that it has a little bit of style. And we'll make the border gray as we did. Border gray 200. So let's hit save. And I know we don't see anything just yet, and that's okay. But let's add one more table data to match or to have the coincide with the update. So we'll go table data or TD. And we've already copied or if you haven't already, excuse me, copied this table data line of code. We're going to make it the exact same. We may make some changes because I think we'll have a button to update the category and also delete it. But for right now, this is okay. We'll just say details. Maybe we ought to put this in a link. We might as well. So we'll go less than bracket, capital L, INK, and you should have the ability to import link from next/link. We'll give it a href of temporal literals. And then we'll go /dashboard / we'll call this category /ID and /update, because this will be the one that will allow us to update the category. So we probably need a way to see the category details. I'll add that to the name. And then within this one, we'll have details. And if we click on this will give us access to update the category name should we choose to. And then next to it, I'm going to add a button later on to delete, but I'm just going to type delete for right now. So let's just hit save. And I know we don't see anything just yet, and that's okay. But what we're going to do is we'll go to our Prisma Studio. So open up another browser and go to localhost 555. And should take you to the Prisma Studio. If you click on category, let's click add a record, excuse me. And the first category name for a personal item tracker, I'm going to call this shoes, or yes, I'll call it sneakers. And I don't think we need to add anything else. You know what? We need to restart this because we changed the categories. That's right. So let's go ahead and before we access localhost 5555, go ahead and terminate the connection. And I'll bring it up. And if you don't remember, once you terminated your connection, just type in npx Prisma Studio and press enter. And we can just copy the localhost 555. And we'll paste it into the browser. And if we click on category, it is finding the table. And perfect. It has a creator as well. Oh, well, not as well, but it has the creator there now. Perfect. So I'm going to add sneakers as the name of this category. And I'll scroll over to creator. And I'm going to make the creator the JA dad. That way, the creator is associated with the logged in user. And if I hit save, and then let's go back to our dashboard. And if all goes well, we refresh the screen, we should see it. Let's see. It is saying, oh, I know what I did. Sorry. So this shouldn't be brackets inside of link. It actually should be $, and then you want to include the curly brackets. And in it, we want to pass in category.id. Sorry, it's been a long day. And if we click save, perfect. We see that we have the table with the first category of sneakers, and we have details, and we have delete. So let's go ahead and let's have the ability to see or add a product to the category. And the way we want to do that is by clicking on this particular name and redirecting us to the individual category page. And then within it, we'll have a form that will allow us to add a product that will be associated with this category ID. So let's just test it out before we add our category form. So I'm going to copy the name, category.name that's in brackets, and remove it. And I'm going to add a link that we've already imported, and we're going to give it an href of temporal literals, and we'll go dashboard / category / $bracket category ID. And then now I'm going to paste in the category name and hit save. And we haven't created this route just yet, but we'll go ahead and do it now. So within the dashboard, let's add another directory named category. And then within it, let's add another directory named ID. And within ID, let's add a file named page.js. And then within this page, we'll go ahead and create or add in within this page, we'll go ahead and create a functional component named category page and hit save. And just to test it out, we haven't added any params and found the category just yet. But let's just make sure that the routing is working as designed. So I'm going to click on sneakers. And as you can see, it redirected us to the category page. And if we look in the URL, we see that it is localhost 3000 / dashboard / category. And we have the category ID there. Perfect. So now we can go ahead and create the route for update as well while we're at it. So within the category ID directory, I'm going to add another folder named update. And in it, we'll add a file named page.js. And we'll do the same thing. We'll create a functional component. And this one we're going to name update category. hit save. And we'll add a back button that will allow us to go back to the dashboard. But for right now, let's just click on the back arrow. And if we click on details, perfect. You see it takes us to the update category page. So the routing for the category is working perfectly. And that should be all the routes that we need to create for this project. Now we'll just need to add the ability to create a category within the add category form that we're going to list right here. And we'll also add the ability to delete a category listed here. And if we click on details, we're going to have the ability to update the category name on an individual page. So we'll work on those things next. Okay, so now that we have the ability to display categories from the database, the next thing that we want to do is have the ability to add categories directly from our dashboard window. So the first thing I'll go ahead and do is create the server action within a separate directory that will interact with our database and give us the ability to create from the front end. So within the lib directory, let's create a new folder named actions. And within it, let's add a file named create category, or excuse me, add category. Keep the naming convention consistent. Add category.js. And at the top of this file, let's go ahead and mark this as use server. Sorry, struggling spelling here, it looks like. And we're going to need a couple imports, but we'll bring them in, and we'll go ahead and begin to bring them in now. So the first one will be Prisma. And because this is within a subdirectory of lib, it's just going to show .. The next one is going to be revalidate path. And the last one will be redirect. And redirect will come from next navigation, and just make sure that revalidate path is coming from next cache. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a asynchronous function, async function, and we want to name it add category. And then inside of it, we're going to pass in form data. And let's go ahead and create the const, and we want to capture the name and creator that will be passed in from the form. And this is going to come from object.form entries. And we're going to pass in the form data. And then underneath it, let's add a try-catch block. Oh, sorry, I added an extra character there. And then within the try-catch block, let's create a variable named new category. And let's set it equal to await Prisma.category. And what we're doing in this file is creating a category, and then we'll be passing information to the database, and that's going to be data. And what we'll be passing is the name and creator. Okay. And we don't need to return anything because we aren't using any client-side code in this project. This is going to be 100% all server actions. And let's go ahead and log any errors to the console. So we'll go console.log error. And we want to make sure we're getting the error, the most important thing. And this is within the catch portion. I'm sorry for not mentioning that. And then underneath the try-catch block, we want to do revalidate path. And we want to revalidate the dashboard. And we want to redirect the user to the home page. And the reason that I'm doing this is I want the form to reset itself once it's complete. And because I don't want to use any client-side, or I can't use any client-side JavaScript in our server form, I'm going to send the user to the home page. And if you recall, if we're logged in, it's going to redirect the user back to the dashboard, and that will clear up the form. So we have everything that we need in this particular file, so we can go ahead and close it out for right now. And then let's go back to the page.js that's within the dashboard and remove add category. And then now what we want to do is add the form that's going to give us the ability to submit a new category. So we'll add form, and I'm going to give a class name of flex just to give it some styling. We're not going to do much with this. This is just to really take advantage of the server and utilize it to create a Crud project. And then inside of the form, you know, we have to submit action since we're not using any client-side JavaScript. And inside of that action, we want to pass in the category that we just created. And if you begin to type in add and then capital C, you should have the ability to import it. Just be sure you're importing it from lib/actions/add-category. And that should take care of everything that we need within the form. Now, inside the form, the first thing we want to do is pass in a input. And I want this input hidden because this is where we're going to pass in the creator. That way we're assigning the category to a specific creator. So we're going to have it hidden, and the ID is going to be creator. And the name of this is going to be creator. And then we want the default value of this to be creator, as you can guess. And I don't want category, I want creator. And we'll go ahead and close it, hit save. We won't see anything, and I'll just refresh the page. Yep, we won't see anything because this input is hidden. And then underneath this input, I want to add an input that you can see. So we're going to go less than bracket, capital I, input, and let's just be sure that we're importing the one, importing the one from nextui-org. And then this input, we want to give it a name of name and a ID of name. And we'll close it, and let's add a placeholder of name so we can see something there. And then we want to add a button, and just one U, sorry. And be sure to import it from NextUI. And within the button, we'll give it a type of submit. And then let's just add, we'll just name this button add, yeah, we'll just name it add category. All right, so if we did everything correctly, this should work. So if we did everything correctly, this should work without a problem. I'm going to add another category of clothes, CLOTHES, and hit add category. And as you can see, we now are seeing the clothes displayed on our screen. And if we go to our localhost 5555 just to see what's in the database, you see that we now have two categories within our database. So we have the ability to add a category. That is absolutely perfect. So earlier, I think I mentioned that we're going to have an individual page for the update and a separate page to display the products. But I think it just makes more sense to have it all within one. So I'm going to remove the href that is listed here on the name, and I'm going to replace it with the one that we have for the details. That way they're going to the same location. In the event you want to click on name, it's going to take you to the update page. Or if you click on details, it's going to take you to the update page. And let me see if I can get a little bit of space between details and delete. I'm going to go class name, margin right of 1. No, this is the wrong one. Sorry. It needs to be here. Add it there. Save it. Update it. There we go. That's enough. Just wanted a little bit of space between this. So now I think the next thing we'll do is add the ability to delete a category. So let's go back to our, sorry about that. So now let's go back to the lib directory, and within actions, let's add a file name delete category.js. And within this, this is going to be very similar to what we had in the ad. Well, a little different. So we'll just type it out. At the top, we'll go ahead and mark it as use server. And then we want to import revalidate path again. We're going to import redirect. And this is going to come from Next Navigation. And then last but not least, we absolutely have to have Prisma, otherwise it won't work. So be sure to import it. Now we're going to create a asynchronous function named delete category. And then we want to pass in form data. And then within it, we'll add a try catch block, and we will create a variable named ID and set it equal to form data.get, and we want to get the ID. In order to get access to the database, we're going to need to add in await, and we're going to await prisma.category.delete. And we want to delete where we have the ID, or we want to delete the ID that we're getting from the form data, I should say. Now under the catch, we want to add a console.log. We want to add the error in the event we get one for some reason, but we shouldn't. And then outside of that try catch, we want to add revalidate path, and we're going to go dashboard. And then the redirect, we're going to redirect it back to the home page. That way it comes back to, well, actually, you know what? We shouldn't have to do that for this one. Let's just go ahead and save it and see what we get. So I'm going to refresh the page, and let me add the form data first. Sorry. So going back to the page.js, let's remove the word delete that we have listed there. And let's go ahead and replace it with a form. And this form is going to need an action. And we want to pass in the delete category that we just created, and be sure it is coming from @lib/actions/delete-category. And then inside of the form, very similar to what we did with this one, we want to pass in a input, make it hidden. We're going to give it a ID of ID. Actually, we don't even need to give it an ID. We could just give it a default value of, this one is going to be category.id. And just be sure to set the name to ID. That way, this is what's being sent to the server. And I think what we'll do is, let's just add a button. We won't worry about adding any icons or anything for this one. And let's just make this delete as it already is, DELETE. And then we'll give it a type of submit. Let's hit save. And then now let's test it out to see what we get. We need to make this, let's go flex. Yep, item centered. Perfect. All right, so now let's delete the, you know what? I think I would rather go variant. Sorry, I'm not going to get too wrapped up in the styling of this for this video. So I'm going to go variant of light, hit save. There we go. So now if I click on, and let's make, sorry, last thing. Let's make the, you know what? Let's just keep it as it is. It looks good as it is. So let's just go ahead and click on delete. Perfect. You see that it deleted the close category. So it is working perfectly as designed. So that cares for our dashboard page that has the display of all categories that we have created, in addition to the ability to add a category. So now what we want to do is have the ability to update a category. In the event we need to change the category name. So if we click on details, it's going to take us to the update category page. So the first thing I want to do is go back to the dashboard and let me copy this section tag because I want the same padding on the category page, the individual category page as I have on the dashboard page. So let's just copy this section with all of the class name and its properties, close it out. And we actually can delete the page.js that is within category/ID. We don't need it. So now the way our folder structure or the route should look, it should be dashboard/category/ID/update. And then now let's close this out, and I'm going to replace the div with a section. And then let's paste in what we just copied. And I'll just type update category just to have something. Perfect. All right, so now that we have the alignment care for, let's care for what's most important, which is the actual functionality. So the first thing I want to do is mark this function as an asynchronous function. And then I want to pass in params because what we're going to do is we're sending the ID to this particular function, and we want to destructure it from params and store the ID in its own variable. And then we're going to use that ID to find the category by its ID and make sure that we're including the products. And in that way, we can display a message if we don't have any products, and we'll have the ability to add products because we already have the category ID on this page. So first things first, let's create a variable named ID and set it equal to params.id. And then we want to create another variable, and I'm going to name this one data just to break up some of the naming convention a little bit. I know it could probably be a little confusing. My apologies for that. And we want to leverage Prisma. Be sure it is being imported from @lib once you begin to type out Pris. And then we'll go Prisma.category because category, because that is what we want to capture from Prisma. And we're going to go Prisma.findUnique, UNIQUE. And within it, we want to find the unique category by the ID that we just destructured from the params that we just received from clicking on the details, the individual category detail. And remember, it is within the URL, and we can see it on the page as well. And then underneath the bracket for where, add a comma, and we want to type in include. And what we're going to be including is products. And we want to set that to true. And in that way, we'll have the ability to display products that are associated with the category. So within the return statement, the first thing I want to do is remove the updated or update category. And let's add a div. And with this div, this will serve as the place that will update the category. So I'm going to go ahead and create the div, and in it, I'm going to add a form. And we haven't created the update category function just yet. So let's just go ahead and do it now. Or not function, the update category action, I should say. So within lib, let's click on the actions directory, and let's create a file named updatecategory.js. And we actually can go to the add category, copy the code from it, and paste it into the update category. And let's just make a few quick changes in order to get this perfect for update category. So instead of saying add, I'm going to change it to update. And we're passing in the form data. This looks good. Now, instead of updating the creator, because nothing is going to change with the creator, remember, this is a personal application. I'm going to replace creator with ID, because that is what we're going to use to grab the unique category to make an update to it. So now within the try catch block, I'm going to replace new category with update. And instead of it saying create, I'm going to type in update, because that is what we want to do. We want to have the ability to update. And instead of data, we'll remove data and type where, and where the ID matches the ID. And the only thing that we'll be updating is the name. So of course we have to pass in data, and then we'll say name is equal to the name that we just destructured. So this is perfect. Really looks good. Good job. So now with revalidate, we want to revalidate to the dashboard, and we can actually redirect the user back to the dashboard because we're no longer on that page, and it's going to automatically provide the updates that we didn't get initially. So go ahead and save the file. This looks good, and as long as we didn't make any errors, this should work perfectly fine. Now we can close out update category and add category for right now. And let's go back to the page.js that is within the update category, or excuse me, that is within the update page. First thing we want to do is inside the form, the most important thing that we need to do is style it. No, I'm just joking. The first thing that we want to do is add the action. And of course, the action that we want to add is update category, what we just created. So we'll go action, update category. And again, I'm going to stress, be sure you're grabbing it from lib/action/update category. Now we'll add a little bit of styling. And again, we're not focusing on the style in this particular project. We just want to get some practice with server actions, or create a project, I should say, with server actions and deploy it to the web. So within the class name, we'll go flex item centered. And I think that'll be all for right now. Go ahead and hit save, and we can always add more if need be. And then within the form, we want to pass in the input. And very similar to what we did before, we're going to make this input hidden and give it a default value of data.id, because we named the variable data this time and not category. We'll set the name of this to ID, excuse me. And then underneath this input, we'll add another input, and this one we want to give a capital I, because we want to input it from Nextjs14, and we'll give it a default value of data.name, and then we'll set this wrong one, default value, and go back, data.name. And then we'll set the name of this input to name and give it an ID of name. Hit save. And we'll refresh the page. Perfect. And we see the name of the category listed here. And then underneath the input, let's just add a button, and we're going to import it from Nextjs. Give it a type of submit. And then within it, we'll just type update and hit save. So before we add anything else, great. Let's just make sure this works. So right now, the name of this is sneaker. Let's just change it to sneakers. Perfect. We see the new name is sneakers. And if we check the database, we see it as sneakers there as well. Great. Nice job. So we'll click on, last time we clicked on details, let's click on sneakers to make sure that the routing or the href is routing correctly. And as you can see, it is. So underneath that div, what I want to do now is have all of the products listed here within a table. So I'm going to add a H2 just as a distinguisher between the update and where the products will be displayed. So I'm gonna go H2 class name of text centered, and I'm gonna go, I think we'll go margin top of 4 and margin bottom of 4. And then we'll go products below. Hit save. Okay. And we see that we have that listed there. So now what I want to do is add a div, and this div is going to represent the add product, and we'll hit save. Perfect. And then outside of that div, we'll add that functionality in a moment. Outside of that div, what I want to do is display a message that we don't have any products created first, and then we'll go in, add the product, display it, and complete out the rest of the functionality. So we'll use a little bit of JavaScript to kind of help us with this, very similar to what we did earlier. So we'll go data.products.length. And remember, we want to grab the products. So we're saying, hey, we want to include the products that are associated with data. And if the length is greater than 0, what we want to do is display those products in the table. And I'm not going to focus on that just yet. And the next thing we want to do is say that if there are no products, let me make sure I get my, we'll say if there are no products, let me add a fragment so we can get rid of the error. There we go. If there are no products, we just want to show a message to the user that says, add your first product. Hit save. Great. So it is showing the message because there aren't any products added in the database just yet. So I'm going to center the text and give it a little margin top of 4. So now what I want to do is create the table so that we can see the product once we create the add product form. It'll already be displayed in the table for us. So let's go ahead and work on that now. So within the fragment, I want to use the tag of table, and then we'll give it a table row, and then a table head. Actually, I'm left off the head here. Sorry about that. Go ahead and just copy and delete what you just typed in, and we're going to go T-head first. Sorry, been a long day for me. And within the table head, let's just give it a little bit of styling. We'll go class name, padding on the X of 5, padding on the Y of 5. No, let's go padding on the Y of 3. We'll go border bottom of 1. We'll make the text gray 800, just like we did prior. We'll go text small, uppercase, and I think I'll make the tracking on this one wider just to change it up a little bit. And in this first table head will be name, hit save. Can't see anything just yet. That's perfectly fine because we don't have anything to display. So just go ahead and copy this table head, and underneath the closing tag, paste it in and change the name to action. Hit save. Again, we don't see anything just yet. That's perfectly fine. Now, underneath the closing table head tag, we want to add the table body. So we'll go ahead and add the tag for it. And then we'll use a little bit of JavaScript to display the category products if there are any to display. So we'll go data.products.map, and we want to pass in a product. That's what we'll name it. And then we'll say, no, that's that one. There we go. Yep. And then we'll say a table row. Data.products.map. Hold on, I think I messed up. Let me retype that. Sorry about that. It was products, no, data.products.map. And then we'll name this product. There we go. And then we'll say table row, give it a key of product.id. And we'll go ahead and add a class name of hover. And we'll add a little bit of styling. I can't help myself. Background gray 100. We'll go transition duration of 300. And then within the table row, we'll pass in some table data. We'll give it a class name, padding on the X of 5, padding on the Y of 5, padding Y of 5. We'll go border bottom, center the text, give it a border of gray 200. We'll make the text small and set the background to white. And then within this one, we want to pass in the product.name. And we can just copy this same table data and paste it underneath the closing tag. And this one will be delete, because only thing we're going to do for a product is delete it. We shouldn't have to change the name of it. So that's going to care for the displaying of our products if we have any. So now let's work on the add product server action first, then we'll focus on the form. So in the root directory, go back to lib, then actions folder within it, and let's add a file named add products.js. And I shouldn't have closed that. We can actually copy the add category code and paste it in the add products.js file, because it's going to be very similar to what we already have in place. So no sense of just retyping out code if we don't have to. So we'll start by changing the function name to products. And we're going to be passing in the name. And for this one, it is actually going to be the category ID. And the reason we're passing the category ID is because, remember, each product has to be associated with the category, and we're going to pass it in to the form the same way we did in prior steps. So make sure that this reads name and category ID, and then we'll change this name to new product. And instead of category, Prisma.category, we'll go Prisma.product. And of course, the data is going to be the name and category ID. So I'm just going to copy it and paste it. And everything else is going to remain the same. Perfect. Great job. Go ahead and save the file. And let's go back to page.js. Now, where it reads add product, let's just go ahead and delete it. And what we want to do is replace it with a form that's going to allow us to add new products as we see fit. So let's go ahead and create the form. Now we'll go form. And inside of it, we know we need an action. And we want to pass in add products, excuse me. And let's go ahead and give it a class name of flex. I think it will need to be flex because it's just an input and a button. And we'll save it. And of course, we'll need to pass in an input. We'll go hidden. And the name of this input that's going to be hidden is going to be name, category, ID. And we'll give it a default value. Keep hitting the wrong one. Default value of data.id. And remember, this default value is coming from this variable, and we're capturing the ID of this variable. Perfect. So now we can go ahead and close the input tag. And then now we'll need to have the ability to submit the name of the product. So we'll go less than bracket input with a capital I, and it is already imported from NextUI. That's right. Let's add a placeholder, and this placeholder is going to be name, and we'll give this a name of name and an ID of name and a closing tag. Hit save. We should see it on the screen. Yep. Now let's just add a button with a type of submit. And we'll go add product. Okay. Awesome. So it's starting to come together well. So now the only thing we need to do is add a product that's associated with sneakers. And the sneakers I'm going to add is Jordans, of course. And we'll hit add product. And once the page refreshes, it takes us back to the dashboard page. And if we click on details, we now see that we have the product of Jordans listed here, displayed. That is absolutely perfect. And I can see now that I misspelled center, which is why it's not centered. C-E-N-T-R, hit save. Perfect. So the last thing we'll need to do to complete out the functionality of this website is, well, first what I want to do before I forget is let me go to the header, and I want to add, for the personal organizer, I'm going to take it out of an H1, and I'm going to replace it with a link. And the href for this link is going to be /dashboard, just to take us back to the home page. Hit save. I'm going to close the header out. And if I click on it, perfect, it works. So I'm going to go back to the individual category page. Now the only thing we need to do to complete out the functionality is create the ability to delete a category, or excuse me, God, I'm losing my train of thought. The ability to delete a product in the event we no longer have the product, or just need to get rid of it, or whatever it may be. We just want to have that functionality. So we'll go into our lib directory, and inside of actions, we'll add a file named delete products.js, and I'm just going to keep the naming convention consistent. So we can go to delete category and copy the code from it, close out that file, paste it inside of the delete-products file. This is going to be very similar to what we had before. We can actually remove the redirect. Sorry about that. I just now noticed it. And instead of delete category, we'll go delete product. And we're going to be getting the form data, getting the ID. That doesn't change. And instead of category, replace category with product. Hit save. And we're going to redirect the user back to the dashboard once we delete it. So let's just go back. Well, we can close out the delete-products.js file. And then let's go back to the page.js, excuse me, and remove the word delete, and let's replace it with the form. And it's going to need an action. That action is going to be delete product. Perfect. And then inside of it, we know we need to pass in the ID of this product. So we'll say hidden. And then we'll go ID is ID, name is ID, and we'll go default value. Yay, I got it right that time. Of product.id. Hit save, and then we'll add in a button and go delete. And I'm going to give it a type of submit and a variant of light. Hit save. Perfect. So now if this works, what should happen is the Jordans will no longer be within the product. The Jordans will no longer be a product within the category of sneakers, and we should be redirected back to the dashboard. No, that's right. We removed the redirect. So perfect. It worked perfectly. It was instant, and we no longer have a product under this category. So we get the message of add your first product. Okay, so this looks great. And we've actually completed out the functionality of our website. So now what I would like to do is deploy it on vercel. So the first thing we'll need to do, and of course, because this is a Prisma project, we'll need to go into our package.json, and we'll need to add post install. we want Prisma generate. Be sure to save the file and close it out. And then we'll need to, let me move this over a little bit so you can see it. Then we'll need to click on source control, and we'll need to update this information and send it to our GitHub. So I'm going to name this first commit, and click on commit, and I'm going to publish the branch. And like I said, I'm going to make this public and include it in the description below. Perfect. And we got the message that it is successfully published to the JA-DAD/product organizer. So now I'm going to go back to vercel, and I'm going to go to the overview page and click on add new, and I want to add a new project. And we see that the product organizer repository is now listed for us to import. So I'm going to go ahead and import it. And I'm going to keep the project name as is. Excuse me. And if I go back to VS Code, what I want to do is I'm going to remove all of the notes. It shouldn't matter. I'm going to remove the notes listed here, and I'm going to copy the code that's listed in the .env file and go back to the vercel deployment window, and underneath environment variables where it says key, just paste in the code that you just copied from the environment variables. And then from here, go ahead and click on deploy. And this will take a few minutes. All right, and if all went well, you should have been redirected to the congratulations deployment window. And if we click on anywhere on the screen that has the project, you're going to see that we're redirected to our home page. Now, what we'll need to do next is update our environment variables with our new primary domain. Previously, it was localhost, but now that we actually have a domain for our deployed website, we need to update our environment variables before we continue to use the product. So let's copy and go back to our .env file within the text editor, and where we have the clerk URL, let's paste in the URL of our deployed website. And I have an extra slash. Be sure that you remove it, otherwise you'll run into an error. And once you've updated the sign-in URL and the sign-up URL with the new domains, so now that we've updated it there, we'll need to go into vercel. We'll click on my teams, product organizer, click on deployments and settings. I'm sorry, not deployments, it's settings. Go to environment variables. And then what we want to do is we want to update the public clerk sign in and sign up with the new URL. So I'm just going to remove both of these. And we can just copy them from and re-add them with the appropriate URL listed in them now. So we'll go back to vercel after we've copied it from the .env file, paste it in, hit save, and it says that it's successful. And then let's go to deployments and hit refresh. Okay, and now let's test it out. You see it is redirecting us to sign in. We'll click on sign in with Google. But it looks like we need to update this code. So I'm going to go back to the VS Code. And this is on the dashboard route. So we'll go to dashboard. All right. So I needed to update the layout. And the easier way to do it was to go back to the local host. Is we'll re-update our Git. dashboard layout. Commit. Sync the changes. And as you can see, it is building the new or the updated deployment. Okay, and now we see that it is finished and it is ready. So I'm gonna go back to the dashboard and update it, and voila, we see that it is now aligned a lot better. I'll click on details. We'll remove the S, click update. We see that it removes the S just fine. Test. We see that it is there just fine. If we delete, we see it's there just fine. Okay, so there you have it, a full stack CRUD application, including clerk authentication. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please consider giving me a like. Also consider subscribing as well. Any suggestions for another video or with this product, I'm open to ideas and feedback. Feel free to leave it in the comments below. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Love you, man.